So many times I get asked, what is the difference between a sports car and a supercar? And it's hard to describe to people, but I would say it's more of a feeling. You know, it's more like response. You know, and it's very important that the supercar features a lot of again, it just has to make you feel really special, you know? You know, it just occurred to me that you probably didn't hear a single thing I just said. Well, in today's video, we're going to address what makes a supercar and why this is the most supercar-y supercar that's ever supercarred in the history of supercars. Behind me is my Verde Mantis green Lamborghini Aventador SVJ. I'm not colorblind. The car is just wrapped in this very Miami Vice, Wolf of Wall Street inspired styling. You know, I am a fan of the 80s, and I saw someone online that had an all-white Aventador, and I just thought, yeah, that would be so cool to do. So I had to put it on here, and I think it looks really good. But I might be changing the wrap soon. I'll get to that later on in the video. But for now, we need to talk about this car. You know, I've had it for about four years now, and I've never really put it on the channel. I've done bits here and there, but I've never done a video dedicated to my beloved, because this car is essentially what helped shape my automotive career. A lot of people know me for my SVJ, albeit when it was green. So I've dedicated this video to it and to what makes a car a quintessential supercar, and we aim to address some of those things today. First thing, styling. Does this car look like a supercar? It does. To look like a supercar, it has to kind of look like a child drew it. And I feel like a child would draw something. It isn't the prettiest car in the world. I tend to find Ferraris to be more pretty. But where Ferrari is the pretty supermodel, this car is like the porn star that you'd want to take out and ride on all night long. No Cars reference. And this being the SVJ, or Super Veloce Jota, is even more excessive in the way it's been designed. So Lamborghini fitted this car with an ALA system, which is an adaptive aerodynamic system. It stands for Aerodynamica Lamborghini Activa. I probably said that wrong. But what it does is it uses some very clever technology to change the air pressure on the rear wing and on the front splitter in order to increase or decrease downforce on the fly. It can also do it on either side of the car at either time, meaning that when you're driving high speeds, it can open up and stall this wing, effectively reducing your drag, increasing your top speed. But when you're going slower, it can close some vents. They're in here, and then it can reapply that downforce, meaning that you can throw this car around, well, a lot better than you can throw a regular Aventador. You see, the Aventador is a large car, as you can see. But to be a supercar, I feel like you have to be over the top. Now, Lamborghini could have made this a small and nimble car, but going with this large, over-the-top styling just puts it in the upper echelon of what it is to be a supercar. The next thing that's important is sound. Say no more. Another thing that makes it the next level of supercar, exists in that space between supercar and hypercar, is the fact that the Aventador is already a very supercar-y supercar. They put more things on it and made it even more of a supercar. I mean, that is just Lamborghini, just doing things the Lamborghini way. There is nothing that looks like that in the world. I don't think there'll ever be again. The doors open upwards. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, come on. But you can tell Lamborghini has been owned by the Germans now, because you still get heated seats and a cup holder, as in one, and it's behind you. So it doesn't really make sense, but it's better than nothing. Now, the Aventador SVJ is a supercar, but I feel like it exists now in a place of legend. It's almost become a hero car for a generation. I feel that it's gone one step above supercar. Not quite hypercar, but it's just in its own area. The reason for that is because of things like rarity. There's only 900 coupes and roadsters, and there's other stuff as well. So there's more than 900, but 900! Anyway, enough with the stationary stuff. Let's get on to the performance. In terms of performance, Lamborghini took the Aventador platform and cranked it up. So the Aventador SVJ puts out 760 horsepower despite it being labeled at 770, but that's Italian horsepower. It also has a four-wheel steering system that allows the car to be more nimble. The car's ECUs have been consolidated into one unit instead of the several units that they had before. And also they've done things like added titanium valve springs to increase the engine and throttle response. Plus, they've just tuned the car, setting up the camber perfectly for a spirited drive. As you know, this car once held the record on the Nürburgring, and it's not surprising to see why. Like this, it's still a heavy car, it's a large car, because Lamborghini's focus wasn't solely on performance when they designed the Aventador platform. Obviously the SVJ is for that, but there's just certain things you can't get around. For example, the Lamborghini Aventador has a robotized manual gearbox, codenamed ISR. So the gear shifts aren't as quick and as snappy as you get in a dual clutch, but they are more dramatic. Surprisingly though, the SVJ is remarkably comfortable, and that's for several reasons. It's got inboard suspension, a bit like a Formula One car, but you get a better amount of suspension, but you get some more suspension travel because the suspension is facing this way, not vertical, so they're not restricted as much in terms of how long it can be. And also, the car is about the length of a Mercedes S-Class. What that means is that you have a longer wheelbase, so when you go over bumps, it just absorbs and cushions it a bit more. It's actually really, really comfortable in here. Plus, despite this car having the Gintani exhaust on it, all the sound behind you gets quite muffled and muted, so it's quite chill inside. Quite relaxed. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. You can't actually tell how loud this car is. I really like underpasses because now, it's all good that this car looks like a supercar on the outside, but there's many supercars or supercars that I've been in that when you sit inside the car, they feel dull and they feel a bit clinical. However, the Italians know how to make a ridiculously over-the-top interior. In fact, when they designed the Lamborghini Aventador, when they did the pre-design, the Lamborghini Reventon, they were inspired by fighter jets, specifically the F-22, my personal favorite fighter jet. So everything in here just feels like you're driving a fighter jet, or driving a fighter jet. And that brings me on to my next thing, like the ownership experience of this car. In the last 4 years, I have, fallen in love with this car over and over again. It feels like every time I get in the SVJ, I'm just reminded about how special it is. It's kind of like, coming home to your wife every day and you see her and you're like, wow, you're the most amazing person in the world. And despite all the quirky things and the arguments and sometimes when we don't connect, I still love you. It's kind of like that. Because it's not perfect in here. There are some things I don't like, and that brings me on to a list of what I don't like about the Aventador SVJ. Despite how ridiculously entertaining this car is, it doesn't come without faults. For example, you're driving along, you look in your mirror, you look in your other mirror, and then you're like, you know what, I want to see what's behind me. There is nothing but engine and vents behind you. For some reason, they decided not to put a digital camera and instead said, you know what, they will be fine. So you kind of have to just drive faster than everyone else. And because you're driving faster than everyone else and the brutal launch controls and the fact that this car is just ridiculous as a whole, you go through tires quite quickly. But on an Aventador SVJ or most Lamborghinis, you can't just buy any tires. You have to buy Lamborghini L-Mark tires in order to keep your warranty. And well, a Pirelli P0 Corsa with the L on it costs about £1,000 more than a regular Pirelli P0 Corsa. So that means to put a full set of tires on my Aventador SVJ, it comes in at about 5,800 Great British pounds without tax. Despite this car being naturally aspirated, it has a lot of torque. For example, Can you see my head moving? Can you see the camera moving? Nathan, cameraman Nathan's getting thrown around inside. Do you know what my favorite thing is? It keeps building. So you just keep getting more torque and more power the higher you get in the rev range. And then you change gear, and then you get the brutal kick that you saw before. Not now, obviously, because I'm not gonna speed, am I? Another thing I don't like about this car, but again, I can't complain, the cost of filling it up. Not necessarily how big the tank is, because it's a relatively small tank, but the fact that I have to fill up every single time I drive this car, like literally every time I drive it. So another impractical thing about the Aventador, or any supercar you drive, is that they ride low. So it means it's really hard to get out of sloped areas. Oh, is it gonna scrape? No, it didn't. Oh, maybe it's not that bad. As long as you have front nose lift. Now, despite these flaws, this is part of what makes a supercar a supercar. It has to just be ridiculous. And this car is over the top when it comes to the ridiculous factor. Now, perfect like a 911 Turbo S or even a 911 GT3 RS is great. It feels nice when you're doing things like track performance or when you're doing things like running around on a day-to-day basis. But when you want a car to be a supercar, perfect doesn't quite cut it. It still needs to be slightly hampered. It still needs to remind you that this isn't a normal A to B car that you can take to the shops. You're gonna have to make compromises to live with this car. And that, it just adds to that factor. And then also, it brings me on to my final point of what makes a supercar a supercar. Now, despite everything I've said, there are cars that lack in certain areas. For example, again, like my SF90, it hasn't got the sound. It's got the performance, ridiculous styling. It doesn't sound like a supercar. And it also isn't as engaging as the Aventador SVJ. But the one thing the SF90 has, and I think one thing that's very important for all supercars, and a reason that I don't call 911 supercars, no hate to the 911 owners, is that I think to be a supercar, you need to start your life as a supercar. You may be thinking, Tommy, what does that even mean? Well, for example, a Porsche 911, the entry-level 911 is not a supercar. It is, in fact, a sports car. It started its life as a sports car. The Turbo S, although it's fast, although it's ridiculous, it's got crazy styling or crazy-ish styling compared to the base car, it still started life as a sports car. Therefore, it's a sports car. The Aventador, the Hurricane, even the Audi R8, there is no sports car variant of them. They started their life as supercars. So they are supercars. And then that also brings me to hypercars. And this is why I don't call cars like the 812 Competizione a hypercar, because it started its life as a supercar. You see, you can't start your life as something, and just because you stick a wing on yourself, you're something else. You're always just going to be a sports car. In all seriousness, a supercar is only a supercar if it starts life as a supercar. Again, sticking bits and making it faster doesn't then turn it into a supercar. That's why I don't think a 911 is a supercar. But that's why I think the Aventador SVJ is the most supercar-y supercar you can get. Because they stuck bits on it and just made it the most outrageous, the most unruly, and the most unforgiving supercar that I feel has ever been sold.